Okay, we are live. Welcome everyone to our weekly message live discussion. As always, with me, I have Laurenzi Rivati and Michaela. And yeah, we were just talking before we started going live that we just all really loved yesterday's service. And I absolutely love how lately they've all really been going in the direction of just talking about God, who is God, what is your relationship with God like or should be like, and just really going being God centered and focused, so we can heal any possible upsets or confusion we might still have around just the very basic subject of God, which is kind of, I guess, also a bit like going back to the basics, where sometimes it's very good, especially after being really advanced in a teaching. And most of you watching are probably have been around in this community and following Jeff and Sharon teaching for quite some time. And then my experience, when you really get mastered at something, when you go back to the basics, you see them in this very new light, and it's always very enriching. So yeah. I think something I actually want to start this with is something that Jeff and Shelia said actually at the very end of the sermon. So we're kind of going to the very back and then just working our way through and just seeing where God guides us. And the thing they kind of close the sermon off is, so I'm just going to read this because I wrote down the entire thing they said as a quote, because it was so powerful and I loved it so much. So Jeff was saying, no other being can love God in the way that you can. And this is what makes you infinitely valuable to God. His heart can only be satisfied and fulfilled by you. And that leaves God something to strive for too. Because the only thing that is not given to God is your love. And so he must earn that from you too. And yeah, I heard this and I was just like, oh my God, this is so powerful and beautiful and everything. And I feel like it really, kind of sums up the entire sermon in a way, because that's also the reason why it's at the end. But yeah, that's the first thing I really wanted to bring up. And yeah, I'm curious to hear what you guys thought about that. And yeah,
Yeah.
please, Laurenzi.
So what I thought about that is, yeah, it's really beautiful, and it's giving you this understanding that only you can do this specific thing, only you can love God in this way, and if that is not reflected in your reality, it's only because you believe otherwise. And as you hear that, you can realize, oh, actually, yes, only I can love God in this way, and then the world would appreciate you in the same way, because the world would see, yes, only you can do that in that way. But until you recognize that within yourself, no one will recognize that around you.
Mm-hmm.
And something like an example would be like, oh, like I uh, kind of like get you, like you have to quit your position because you're not good anymore. We have to find someone else. You can be replaced. When you hear all these things, like can be replaced, you can do all of those things. Even if it's coming from someone that it's more spiritually mastered, it's only a reflection of what you believe about yourself, that you can be replaced, that you can have all of those things, that it's basically like you are not you. So basically they're only reflecting that you are in an upset right in that
Mm-hmm.
moment. So therefore, as you heal that upset, you can realize that, oh, actually I'm invaluable, and then the person can see that you actually are invaluable. So, yeah.
I love that. I think that's also, kind of the core of any comparison upsets. When you look at other people and you compare yourself with them, or even in the ways of be it I'm better or I'm less, kind of comes from this, you can't even do that because everyone is so unique and fits, a very specific expression of God that, it's kind of yeah, it's not, the concept of comparison is just really purely coming from ego.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. And like with this, you can really see clearly that as you learn about your gifts, about what you're good at, and you're still like, oh my God, I'm so good at this, but look at those people, they are not so good at this. I'm so good at this, but then you're trying to compare yourself, your gift, with someone else's gift, which that's insane because they're so different, they're so unique. You
Mhm.
cannot do that. Like you cannot go in a place and okay, someone teaches you how to how to paint, and then you have your own style of painting, and you're saying, "Oh my God, I'm painting so much better than my teacher of that paints there." And because it's different. I can paint in this way that my teacher cannot.
Mm.
Therefore, in that moment, if you go into your ego, you'll say, I'm better than my teacher, rather than seeing that my teacher helped me to develop this and I'm good at this in this way. But doesn't mean that I'm better than my teacher. It means that my teacher has a different way, a different gift, and I have a different gift than my teacher. Therefore, that that makes it um, so beautiful that we have these different gifts and we don't have to have the same gift. So from this point, you can see that it's not the teacher just did its best to teach you, and is not against you. It's not comparing himself with you. It's just leading you to love, and it led you perfectly because you are in this space. So it's safe from this perspective to always respect your teacher.
Hmm. I love that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. You go ahead. You go first.
Yeah, I was thinking about the best chef in the world. Like, if you just take the best anything in the world, the best cricketer, the best football player, and people would think that that he is number one and he's at the top. But and some people would try and strive to become that, play that style of whatever field they are, like try and cook like him or try and play like that person. But more there were so many people who would, if they spent more time in nurturing their own skills which was so specific to them, they would rather, they themselves would be number one in their own, in their own expertise in that own area. So you don't, like, you wouldn't waste, so called waste your life be trying to be somebody else, um where you can just be your best self. Yeah, like the way God created you. And it's so specific, like the design that he created is so unique. I was just thinking about this yesterday, when, you know each time Jeff and Shalia come up with their own products or anything, it's one aspect of their being is being expressed. And I love that it's like they utilize um every single quality that God has created them with. So if even if it's a tiny little thing, they would use it. So it's like, if music is a huge part, they would come up with divine music, and then there's divine dish, and next, the next products which will next come. Um, and even in class, like I was just, if a student is sharing their life, for example, I just remember now that it was summer, and she was just talking, and Jeff's like, just stops her, and he says, do you write or do you rap? And she's like,
I
what?
remember that
Like,
one.
where did that? Yeah. And he's like, um, do you do that? And she has no clue, but it's just that one little, she would express it in a certain way, and he catches it, and he'll just tell her that, oh, you can nurture this, like nurture this, so you can create pipelines in this, in so many different areas. Like, I didn't know that I could speak or guide meditations. I had no idea that that was possible. But that was like, it felt like Jeff and Shreya gave me that, you know like that opening, uh like one quality you can express. So pretty, it's nice, like there's so many that we could hone our skills on, so many skills.
I love that. And it actually really relates to something else they said in the sermon, how, in everything you do, every pursuit, every hobby, every passion you have, it's, like you're seeking God in it. And it brings you so much joy and happiness and peace because you're with God in that endeavor, whatever, like activity, what you're doing. And I feel like that's really, when you go deeper in your relationship with God, it's kind of, I use this example in it's just like this image metaphor, whatever you would call it, in our live stream in the open forum last week, how like I feel like I have this like huge mansion with all these like, I don't know, 10 rooms or so, and then all of a sudden I find that, oh my god, at the end of that hallway I have another room that I didn't even know existed before. One day I just walked down that hallway and I'm like, open that door and I'm like, oh, there's a room here, I can do amazing stuff with God in this room too. And I feel like the deeper you go with God and you really find your relationship in all these relationship with God in all these areas where you didn't have a relationship before with him, it's like opening this huge area in your life where you can now be with God too, and you're constantly expanding in that. Or like how Jeff and Shia said is that God is constantly filling the space, and then when he does that, it's not like the space runs out for him to fill, but like this, the space grows, so he is more space coming for him to continuously fill. So we're like in this eternal expansion and deepening of our relationship with God and love.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, and I also liked what he said about how it's not even that space exists, how space is a construct of the mind, but it's like there's nothing but God. So there's not like space full of nothingness that God fills, but there's just only God, and God's only ever expanding.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was beautiful. But one thing I wanted to share is like when they said how only you can basically love God in the way that you can love God, I remember that just brought a lot of relief to my heart, because like in the past, I would see somebody doing something well and I would think I need to do that, like just like that. But that's actually really stressful to think. And it just feels really relieving when you're like, well, I'm just going to love God in the way that I feel good loving God. And I remember just like choosing that when I heard them say this in the sermon, and just feeling so much relief and like creative energy returning to me, because it is like a really cool thing to be able to love God in the way that you can love God. And it's really yeah, just like made me feel really like passionate about loving God and like expressing my gifts, and knowing that I like everyone does have their own unique gift. So that felt good.
Absolutely.
I love that. Yeah, I was just thinking about beauty, and earlier, like before, how I would look at other women and think that they're so beautiful, and trying to be that type of beauty. It would be like, it's like Shalia saying, I know that my body loves consistency, so consistent meal time. So in the same way, like I would see that certain way of taking care of my beauty would be suitable for me, versus I wouldn't need to look at another feminine's way of, the way she takes care of it, or the way she adorns herself. It wouldn't um, be suitable for me. Like I would probably be being inauthentic by not being that. So it feels natural to be just exactly the way you're created. And when you work with those features, or like in beauty, when you work with your own features, you the more beauty emerges, like the more God is expressed. Yeah,
Yeah,
good.
that's beautiful. And I actually, Julia said in a class once, like she was actually talking to me about divine beauty, and it was a good example. And she said what was like what God created my image to be, and like the clothing I should wear and express myself would be different and not work for her, and vice versa. And I just thought that was really cool that God really did individually create us to express something very specific to us, and it's safe. That's
Yeah.
really nice.
And I wanted to share something about what you just said about clothes. That Alexandra bought herself a while ago, like think it was shirts, and she bought herself a shirt that she thought that looks good from the standards of how people think looks good, and then she bought herself something that she just loved. She just felt good. That looked, she thought it was silly and everything. And actually, when she tried them on, the thing that she first bought, because the standards and everything was like was not really appealing to me, but the thing that she bought for herself that she felt good in, it
Mm.
was still it felt so good to me, and I was just like, oh my god, you look so good right now.
Oh,
Oh,
perfect. Yeah, perfect example.
that is so perfect. I had a struggle for ages where I was like kind of trying to find my style. I would just like change and back again. And I was just like, I even had people come to me and be like, "You should dress like that. That is like how, like I see you dress." And I tried that on, like basically I had someone, and they didn't do anything wrong, but I had someone be like, "You should dress in more feminine, like rose and pink tones." And I tried out for 2 days, and then at the end of the 2, I was like, "I hate this. This is like so not me. I can't continue dressing like this." And then I went back. At one point I was like, just screw everything. I'm just going to dress with whatever feels good for me. And I feel like, the moment I kind of started looking outside of me to find who I was, even, in small, maybe not the biggest important thing like your style, but, everything is like important when you're finding yourself. But yeah, the moment I stopped looking outside of me to find the answer, who am I? How should I dress? And I just look like what feels good for me, what feels like I can, truly express myself, and I also feel like comfortable in. And just like me, that's when I, like just organically, God was guiding me to the right clothes, and I just started to go more and more into like find a style that really feels like me, where I can when I put on clothes and just like, oh, it feels so good. I just feel like me. This is like so refreshing and easy and comfortable. And yeah, so sometimes I guess you just have to go through contrast and play around a bit and try things out, kind of like Alexandra did with like buying one piece of clothing that she thought felt good for her, was like accepted, and one that really felt like her. And the contrast was very evident, like it was really clear that all you have to do is just be you.
Yeah, it kind of goes with what Jeff was saying about how God is awareness and not thoughts themselves. Like that awareness is supreme to thought. And it felt like when you're exploring these places, like in this case, the beauty thing, you can actually that was the awareness, like the exploration and you being aware that okay, here is how I get to explore God. I express God best from me.
Absolutely. I just like remembered something. Let me see if I can find that in my notes. Oh yeah, I love this so much. So Jeff basically said, God, God is in, now we're talking about clothes, which is interesting that this is coming up, but let's just go with it. Like God is in your clothing, in your clothes, in your style, in all of that. So he loves when you love that, and in order to love that, you have to get to know it and just be present with it and aware of it. And that's how you get really clear with everything, by like having a relationship with it, having a relationship with God in your clothes, in your style, in the way you dress, and really getting to know what feels good here, what doesn't feel good, how do I really, where's God in this area in my life, how am I present with God in that area in my life. And as we've really uncovered, it's like that looks so different for everyone. I can't go to Alexandra and like that skirt she bought, I don't think that would make me happy, or like I would find God in that skirt. But for her, she really found God in that skirt. And I find God in, it's like a pair of trousers that are yellow. I don't think so, but just like first example that came up. And that's like, that's like actually like so beautiful how like God created us like so perfect and unique. And that like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that goes hand in hand with what they said about how it's not like the thing that makes you happy, it's God. And so it's finding God in that place, finding God in your clothing and your self-expression. And that there's like nothing beyond God, that God is the only goal. And so if something feels bad about like the way you dress or, like anything, you can just choose to find God there. And you can find God anywhere. Like it can be the most simple thing. So I like that this is coming up because it really is like a good example of how there's nothing separate from God and how God is in all things, and loving God here is just as important as living God anywhere else. Just
Mhm.
all God.
Yeah, and it's about being close with God. That feels good, as you said. Like it's not about that thing that feels good. It's about the God,
Mhm.
finding God in that, and it's how you like to experience God there. And as well, it's God is a person. Again, like we have to go about this as well to really speak and go
Mhm.
to just say like God is shy. He's not gonna just bring everything there. You just have to go get close to him and just like keep following the good feeling, keep following what feels good, what's the cloud that I love, what's the thing that I enjoy, what's the thing. And the more you do that, the more you follow that good feeling and get clear that that's God, is not sickness. The more
Yes.
you
Mm.
do that, the more you actually are more with God, and God can show himself even more. And of course, when to realize for what is sickness and what is God, because if you're in sickness, of course you're going to think even sickness is God, maybe. But how you do that, how you realize, as they shared, it was just like, well, if I keep doing this, does that make me feel good? Does that bring me more joy? Is that productive? Like, is it really bringing things are moving in my life, or are just sitting in one space and nothing is moved?
Mhm.
So as you shift from like, okay, actually let's try something else, because I tried this and nothing is moving, nothing it feels good. Like I'm keep trying to eat this way and I'm unhappy, I'm trying to be this way, I'm unhappy.
Mhm.
Try something different that feels good, and then as you try the next thing you realize, well, this actually feels good. After I sleep I actually feel good.
Mhm.
After I sleep a little bit more I feel a bit not so good, I feel like tired still. So
Mhm.
maybe I should sleep less. So then by keep exploring, you can realize what is actually truth. Because even if it feels good, oh, it feels good to sleep so much or to have that clothes that look like that, I know, person in the magazine
Mhm.
and they look very good. Maybe actually it's not that good for you. And
Mhm.
Right.
just finding exactly, fine tuning yourself to God, to love.
Mhm. It's interesting with that, like this like choice of clothes. Like I think like when you see something in a magazine and you're like, oh, I want to dress like that. You're actually like choosing in that moment. It's kind of like you're not choosing God, you're choosing what is socially accepted. So it's kind of interesting in all these areas to like see, just like honestly look like, am I choosing God right here, or am I choosing something else that, as you said, Lorenzo, I think is God, or I perceive as God, or everyone says this is God, so I guess it must be for me too.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in the sermon, Jeff said, how is it you have a relationship with God? And it really is just simply you follow the good feeling and you apply logic. And I just love how easily that was summed up. And it felt really good to me to hear that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Mm.
um
Mm. By the way, something that I wanted to bring that I haven't said about how to realize when you're in insanity. Basically, you're not thriving.
mm-hmm.
That was the word that he used, and I really love that word. Like when you thrive, you are with God. When you're not thriving, you're not with God.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
That is a very
Good
cool
point.
observation. Okay, let's see. I think, now that we've kind of covered, like we started with going to the very end of the sermon. So now let's go to the very beginning of the sermon, which started with the question, what is God and how do I know if God exists? And, the thing that I really like is something that was really new for me there is to, look at God as this, like, how we know like everything has a cause and an effect. And then look at God as this like causeless cause. Because I always had this question of like, okay, like I understand that God created everything, God created us, I didn't create myself, which means God must exist. But I always had this question like, okay, but God exists, like, so did another God create God? Is like a higher God above God, and then another higher God above that, he created, he's like hierarchy of God, so to put. And it was always like, like kind of like feeling entirely like, God just is, like, what's the, like, how can God just like be? It doesn't have the cause, it's just like an effect that is there. Oh, it's like this cause, as Jeff put. And I think that what, when I heard that, it just like, it brought a lot of relief to my heart, that it's like kind of just this like acceptance of, okay, God is this cause, it just is.
Yeah.
And you can't really, I guess, logically with your mind understand that.
Yeah. it reminded me of when I was very young. I would sit, like, I just remember sitting in like car rides and I would try and imagine God is infinite and like how your mind really cannot like comprehend that God just always was. And well, I mean, I guess it can, like you just accept God always was and always will be. And it, yeah, it brought a lot of relief to me. But I just remember that and feeling like that's why like time is just a construct of the mind, because there is no time and God just is infinite. And I think that it is really relieving and beautiful.
Yeah. And you know, something that also was really new for me is like, I never thought that God created love. It was always or created harmony and created peace and created all these things. It's like just like not a thought that ever crossed my mind. I was always like, all these things just like were, but like God even created all of these things. And like the thing that I really loved so much that Jeff said is that love is God's greatest creation other than you, and love is what God created to express how he feels about you. And that was just like, that touched my heart so much. I was like, oh, God created love so he could express how he feels about me. That is pretty amazing. Like, we are really loved.
Yeah, that part really touched my heart too. It was really sweet.
Precious.
Very beautiful, and I wanted to say that, but you brought it up, so it's like perfect.
Me too. We all loved it.
Sorry, I was first. Sorry, not sorry.
Causeless cause of the sorry.
Yeah, I liked how he said that like the mathematical perfection and order of the universe was also created. Like that mathematical perfection is describing something, and it's basically describing God and God's creation. And how basically everything started with God's presence. And I thought it was cool because in our live stream on Thursday before this sermon, we talked about how, or Denise, I think you brought it up about how God at first said, realized he was joy, and then but there was no one to like share in his joy, and so he created his children. So I thought that was really cool that it came up in the in Jeff and Julia's service as well.
Yeah, they said, I think the quote is like, I am joy, but there is none to enjoy me.
Right. Yeah.
That is, yeah. God is just really amazing.
Yeah, this service.
Oh, you go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say this service like really just helped me like feel into that place of devotion for God, and, like passion for God. Like it really spoke to me and was really healing.
What, you know what, it kind of after the service, like what for me was like the most striking thing, like something just like made click in my mind when it comes to seeing God as a person. Because I think, you know, as an overall, you know, it's kind of like I always saw God as love and all of that. I was like, yeah, God is a person. I know that I have a personal relationship with him. But like I just really went deeper into understanding that, like, just as I have a relationship with any other person, I have a relationship with God. And, you know, obviously it is God. He's not a human. But it's like, you know, as Jeff and Chia said, God has feelings, he has thoughts, he has all of these things that any person has. And you can really treat him like it's like real person. And yeah, that was just like, yeah, just something made that click in my mind and heart when I heard that. And I just got really clear on like, oh, like God wants to talk with me, and like he's happy when I, you know, talk to him and tell him that I love him and all of that.
Yeah, like even in the sermon when they said that God has feelings and God has personality, like it, I remember Shulia saying that she once checked the dictionary and wanted to check the definition of a person, and like wanted to check if God fits the definition. And then I just like wrote it down just to, like, curious to see what the definition said. And it was like, a person is a being that has certain capacities or attributes such as reason, morality, consciousness, or self-consciousness, and being a part of a culturally established form of social relations such as kinship, ownership of property or legal responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me feel like all those words connect to God in so many different ways. Because when you say, like, for example, if you say ownership, it feels like God owns us and God owns the earth. You can, like, in so many ways, it perfectly fits who God is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And
like having a
he has all of these things you mentioned, like morality, consciousness, self-consciousness, reason.
hmm, yeah, and in devotional songs in like Hinduism, you can, like, there would be verses they express that the god feels the pain. They would show emotion. So he would, I'm sure it'll stay in other scriptures also, where, like, mm, he's having a relationship with his child, the us, the created, and he's expressing the different experiences the child goes through. God expresses the emotions related to the kid's experience, and it makes me feel like every song or every uh, a goddess depiction that they've painted like years ago has these qualities to it. Like, you can see different expressions, and it uh, makes me feel like, like the same god can have so many different expressions. That's why, like, in Hinduism, like, one god is um, the form that it has many forms. So it's like, for example, the goddess, the Devi, can have like 9 expressions. I'm sure, like, so she can be like the sweet mother, and she can be the aggressive, fierce warrior, where and then she can like completely go to the other, where she's the destroyer, and like these different uh, aspects are shown in God, which we have also. So it's like, it's like saying that all these emotions we feel is divine also, because God feels all those emotions too. So it's like we're not separate from God,
You know
that
what
He really is a person. Yeah.
sorry. What came to me while you were speaking is, how like in Greek and also like, Roman, like in the antique time, like they had all these like Greek gods, like, they had like 20 or 30 gods, and every god would, represent a different area of life. So I had, the god of like Mars, the god of war, and the god of the ocean and seas, and the god of wine and play, and the god of everything. And that was, they had like these, like all these gods, and they had a relationship with every god in that area. I mean, what they didn't like see is that it's like one God and that, they connect with in all these areas. But like the way they kind of, I guess, like dealt with that and try to understand it is like actually, like just making a God for every area and having a relationship with that God in that area and praying to that God when it comes to, that area. But, it just like really shows how all these gods are actually like one God who just like kind of took different forms and was like, you know, like in
Hmm.
everything you do, it's God.
Hmm. And it really shows where the consciousness is right now rather than what it was before.
Mm-hmm.
Because before, seems like the consciousness couldn't perceive that God is just one and
Mm-hmm.
had to be more specific, like God is this or this and this is the God of this, God this is the God of this. But now we're realizing that there's just one God
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
in everywhere, everything. Like now our consciousness is so much developed, so much more developed that we can actually perceive God even better. And of course, there are other levels even deeper of like what God is. But now this is what we can perceive, but it's so much better than like we it's in the evolution of how how much clearer we can see God right now than how it was before through Jeff and Shelia's teachings. Of course, as we keep going deeper, we will find a better, even a better understanding. We will be able to expand to see God even better. But it's just like I feel good and proud as a humanity as souls as well. Like where we how far we got to. But of course,
Yeah.
everything is already. So
Well, I wanted to mention, like with Greek mythology, for example, like the gods were always like pretty unstable, like they did horrible things.
They did.
And so, yeah. And just like, I just wanted to talk about in the sermon where Jeff said, God is perfect. God created you perfect. So why is there so much suffering in the world? And it was just because, and he said, that because God is perfect, misery is just an illusion. So God like doesn't, feel the pain, and God didn't create pain. So I just think that's really interesting. And it does show like how consciousness has evolved, and how, God didn't create suffering or evil or anything like that.
there's not good and evil.
Right.
Battle between like angels and the other side. But
Yeah.
it's just love.
What I
Yeah,
also
yeah, sure.
I'm just going to real quick as one sentence. What I also really got from the Greek mythology thing is like you can't put God into a box or try to understand him by defining him and putting characteristics on him and stuff like that, because he's like so expansive, and he's like just like in everything. So even like making all these different gods to try to understand God actually is like, you're just like kind of putting him in different a couple of boxes, and you can't do that with God. So
True.
Rivati, please continue.
Yeah. I was just thinking about the evolution and what Laurencio said. Because just today I was thinking about, the memes that have come out in recent times when we show Jesus as, like, what's it called? Like the disc, like he's playing the disc and he's DJing, and like these images of like like these images that we think like the cool Shiva, and he's just like wearing cooling glasses, and like the modernized, like the depiction of these gods is so cool, and it's so fun, and it's just like us, like how we are now, and it's so perfect because I was like itching to share this because Jeff and Shalia teach the same way. I feel like they speak, and the way they speak, the way they relate to all their students is exactly like that. It's like um, our gurus will talk to their disciples that way, which is exactly like in this modern era. So it's like they have our own language, the way we speak right now. Um, uh, and it's still considering that it's still God, that we don't separate, like older generations would think that, oh, like the new kids don't know God, they're so separate from God, but like all those memes make so much sense. Yeah.
I love that you brought that up.
God is fun.
Yeah, and he has great humor.
Yeah.
I really love that you bring that up, because it really shows, how we're like really letting go of what we think religion and, also spirituality was in the past. Like, or like, I should say, like the image that we had, it was like this, like, just like, oh, traditional, boring thing that was like, really serious, and also probably in connection with like thinking that God is a punishing God. So you have to do these things and be serious about them, because otherwise, like, oh damn, I'm gonna go to hell, and that's not fun. I don't want to go to hell. And we're really transcending that and seeing how much fun religion and spirituality is, and because that's life again. But going back to the I am joy, and there's none to enjoy me, so he created us so we could enjoy God, and just like be joy and live a life of joy. And religion is is something very joyful and fun and wonderful. It's not just like boring thing, and like learning is not this boring thing. Yeah.
I really love that. Yeah, it's like that's what I really love about the Sunday services, is that they really show you, like Jeff and Shalia really help bring this fresh new way of like relating to God, where it's actually like God is really cool, really funny, like God has so many cool qualities that are not like boring church, going to church every Sunday, like just the old way that we thought relating to God was supposed to be, that it's actually like juicy and really fun. And it reminds me of what Jeff said here. He says, as you're present with something and you want to get to know it, to have a relationship with it, you'll make like discover things that are totally and dramatically changing. Like they change everything that you understand about the thing that you're getting to know. And so it's always God, like you're always getting to know God on a deeper level and learning new things. Like now we're learning that God is cool. Like God is like the thing like the next big thing on earth. I mean, we've always loved God and there's always been God, but we're really evolving what God is and how we relate to him.
Get clear that we really desire God. More
Right.
that we just desire is God. It's like at the beginning when Jeff was reading from forgot exactly where he was reading, but he was reading about like, I mean, the book with Yogananda. It's that every time it was like with God, God, God. All that I want is God. Like whatever he was, whatever Yogananda was doing, she was doing. It was basically was getting to the point of like God, 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 just God. And even just hear Jeff read this and speak about this, it was so peaceful for my heart to always know that wherever I go, God is there, and just I can call upon God to help me there. And it's peaceful. It's peaceful to be with God, and that's something that I love as well. And it's safe, as you said, Michaela, to listen to God. And I love how Shelia was saying about the body, to listen to your body, because she didn't knew that her body likes to just be consistent with the meal, and then the body was much more happier about that.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's like, really what came to me as when it comes to, having a relationship with God and seeing that he's fun and all of these things. It's like, you really have to let go of like anger towards God, resistance to God, maybe even fear of God, which has been around for centuries in religion and even, in the antique times. So, you can actually have a relationship with him. And I just was like, God is really like, he's like your best buddy and like your bro. That's like one relationship you have with him too, and obviously he's your lover and all of that. But yeah, it's like this, like not this like serious, I have a relationship with God, oh amen, who thing, but it's like this really like just like chill thing that's like the most natural, thing. Like, he's always with you. He's like, your constant companion for all of eternity, just as you are your constant companion for all of eternity. And it's like the most normal thing there is.
Yeah. And I loved Shalia described it as a very, like a joyful relationship to be in, and that he's in all things, and God loves when you love him. So he loves when you love, the things that you do in your life. So it's basically God just loves when you love everything because everything is God. So it's safe to love everything. There's nothing like apart from God, nothing separate.
That is so beautiful. Oh, Rivati, you're going to say something.
No, I was just like, yeah.
Producing sounds of joy.
I just love now how Revati is just unmuting herself and just providing the sound, the emotion.
We need background sound too.
So thank you, Revati, for that.
That's funny.
There's two more things that I just want to quickly, touch. One of them is like, this entire thing around like not really having a choice, that like actually you can only choose God. And the way Jeff put it is like you can either, the only choice you really have is am I am I engaging with God, in God, or am I not? And other than that, like you really like free choice is kind of this like, you can't really prove that that really exists. You're actually always doing exactly what God wants you to do in that moment because you're one. And yeah, all you have to, you get to choose between is like God or not God. And one of them is going to bring you misery and pain and not good things. And the other one is just going to bring you everything you really desire and happiness.
Yeah. And even if you do the things that you believe like it, I mean, the things that brings you misery, you're still doing what God tells you. So like you're still falling into God's plan no matter what.
Yes. I loved that. That was just the best thing. He said, like, even if you work for eternity with every fiber of your being not to love God, you will have played right into his hand. And I was just like, oh, amen. Like, there's like everything is fine. Even like the worst of the worst of the worst, people, quote unquote worst, like even then, like, you're not separate from God, and you can't ever separate yourself, and you're just like, God's just bringing you home. And I just felt so much like love for God when Jeff said that, and I just realized like how much God really does love us, and it's unconditional.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's how they say that you can't fuck up your relationship with your twin flame. It's just the same way with God. You can't fuck up your relationship with God, no matter what you do.
Yeah, it's very true. It's it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. By the way, I would love to just bring up the peace. What Shelia spoke about, the peace. Like, oh, I'm not thinking about anything right now. Like,
Mm. Oh my God, that is literally the second thing I wanted to bring up.
Me too.
I knew it. So
Boss.
I just love this because it's like how they said that, like, a constant stream of peace is a healthy mind,
Mhm.
and a healthy mind is connected with God. So being able to be peaceful into your mind and not have always like thoughts into your mind and just like relax and be in the flow, because sometimes you don't have to think and you just do stuff. Like sometimes I'm just like not even thinking and I'm just
Mhm.
speaking, and it
Mhm.
just flows and it just goes, and that means that you are with God and it's safe to be with God.
Mhm. Also, the other like piece of that is like a constant stream of thinking as a result of a sick mind,
Oh
which
yeah.
I found really interesting. Yeah, it's just another thing I never thought about. When they mentioned that, I thought back. This like happened to me a couple of years ago. I think my dad, I don't know, he was reading some spiritual book, and he actually brought this up to me and was like saying how like like totally like you should actually reach the state where you're not thinking anything, like nothing is going on in your mind, and you should meditate to reach that state and always practice that. And like this was probably like 5 or 6 years ago or so, maybe even more. And I remember back then I was like, how can you possibly do that? And I actually sat down and tried to get to that state in my mind where I'm not thinking. I was like, this doesn't work. The more the harder I try, the more I start thinking and my mind starts going crazy. And I was just like, like this is not working. It's not possible to not think anything. Like, who is saying that? Like, liars. I was
Uh,
like, this does not work. And then when Jeff and Shea mentioned this right now, I actually was thinking about this the other day. I just was sitting in peace and being like, just like going into becoming aware of like my mind. And I was just like, I'm actually not thinking about anything right now. I just feel like I'm just like being, and nothing is really going on in my mind. And then I instantly had to think back about that experience a couple of years ago where I was like, oh, you actually can do that. This is so cool.
but about what you shared, I remember when I was much younger, I was basically believing that the more you think, the cooler you are.
Me
Oh,
too. I had that thought. I was just
that's,
gonna share that. Yeah, that's so funny.
wow.
Yeah, I used to like catch myself not really thinking anything specific, and I would think there's something wrong with me, and I'd like I
Wow.
would just I would think this, if you to be smart, like you had to be constantly thinking something, and so I would try and like force myself to think thoughts, but yeah, so it brought me a lot of peace when they said that, and especially since doing this work, like I will just catch myself like with no thoughts and just kind of being, and then like somebody will be like, you look like you're thinking a lot. What are you thinking? And I'm like, I'm not. Like, I'm just being present with my feelings. Like, yeah, it was really cool that they said that. I never thought of it that way. It was really enlightening.
Yeah, I know. Even for me, like I remember as a kid, I was thinking like I have to think. So just understand the insanity that I was believing at that time. That like thinking like wasn't enough. I have to think two things at the same time to have
Yeah,
two.
me too.
So I was having two streams of thoughts in the same time. It is basically
Oh
insanity.
my.
I
Holy.
know, like.
That is insane.
I relate to that. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, it was quite difficult, and I was like, yes, I can do this, because I was thinking, I was seeing these movies on TV, like this guy that basically knows everything. So he, like, I thought like the way he's doing it, like just thinks about things all the time, so he knows all those stuff, and like even like this guy could always know everything, will never forget anything basically.
Are you talking about Sherlock?
No, it's
Oh,
it's it's a TV show, John Doe, something like that.
okay.
Basically, a guy that doesn't remember about himself, who he is, but he knows everything about the world. So
Wow.
nothing about him, but
Oh,
everything about the world. But he's unhappy. Like I said, he's not happy
and
at
that's
all.
so funny that he didn't know about himself, but and he was thinking like two things, uh, like
L-
that's like equates to that
Mm.
consciousness. Like, hmm.
Oh yeah, like because
Hmm.
he knew everything else about like the countries, about the water, about he would look at something. He would know all the mathematics in the world. He would know the art. But basically, he had two things. He didn't know who he was, and he couldn't see colors.
Wow.
So basically, he
Oh
was just
God.
unhappy. Like he could make
Hmm.
as much money as
Hmm.
he could you could think. Like he could just go and find the lottery and win the lottery very easily. He could just like he knew basically everything, but he didn't find any happiness in everything.
Because there's
Mm,
no
well, perfect.
no God.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no
Yeah,
God, no color, no. It's like black and white. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Like, I mean, beautiful, beautiful in the sense of like, good like lesson.
Yeah. Without knowing yourself,
Yeah.
you can't know God. And without knowing God, you can't know yourself. And so there's no
Hmm.
joy. Mm. So yeah, I mean that's a perfect example of this whole sermon is like nothing matters without God. Like
Mhm.
it's God that you seek, not the knowledge or whatever, the intelligence. It's just God.
I really love, like, because when you started talking about it, instantly thought about Sherlock, and I had this face too. There's this like British TV series with Benedict Cumberbatch, I'm a
I
big
know.
fan of, called Sherlock.
Yes.
Do you like that? Do you guys
Yep.
have?
Hmm.
I love that series so much. Oh my god, I was really obsessed with it. I guess I still am because yeah, I just love it. And I was, when I started watching that, I was so impressed with how he could combine stuff and understand everything, and just like his thinking and just like this like method he uses to like kind of create this like mind palace, which I also tried out back when I started watching that some years ago. And I kind of tried, like I was like, can I train myself to think like that and have all of these thoughts going on and understand everything. And then I guess at one point I really realized, like like you understand everything when like you just allow God to like show you. And he was, I guess like he really has this gift of just like letting God, like it's God doing it through him basically, and that's like his gift and probably part
Exactly.
of his purpose in a very big way. um
Mhm.
Mm.
so yeah, because it never felt like this unbalanced or like he was doing anything wrong. He was just like, I was really impressed with that. So I think like why this is coming up is just like you say that like thinking like your mind is not a bad thing. Like God has thoughts and has a mind and all of that, and we need our mind and our logic and our reason to like live in this world and understand this world, and just combine things that need to be combined and understand what is going on and all of that. It's just
Right.
when you only live in your thoughts and your minds and you ignore everything else, and you're just like not present with God and you are numbing out. And
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, like it's your beingness that is the place that you live from because it's like your beingness is when you're with God and your mind serves that. Like I remember Laurentiu, I think it was you that said that let your mind be the servant or
No,
something
no,
or
no. Kind of like this, but let me just share. So,
yeah.
like depending of like who you are, meaning divine masculine or feminine. I was saying like, let's say for divine feminine, because you're three right here. Like, to choose for your heart to be the queen and for your mind to be its servant.
Yes. That really
And
Yeah.
stuck with me.
Me too.
Me too.
Laurentiu is a true spiritual teacher.
Laurentiu 2020.
thank you. But like this gets got stuck with me because Alexandra told me about it. So
Oh.
Alexandra told me like like choosing my heart to be the king and my mind to be its servant. For
Mm.
me,
Mm,
divine masculine. So yeah.
perfect.
And yeah, because I don't know, like every time I think about that, I feel like I just like I can speak a lot about it, and you guys know about it because I always like go in depth even with that. What does it mean? But we don't necessarily have the time, you know. Yeah.
Well, I think, we've I don't have anything else in my heart that I feel like expressing. We kind of covered everything that came up in the sermon. And yeah, I feel a sense of completeness in all of us. So thank you, the three of you, for being here and adding your input. I always learn a lot from what you say and what we talk about. Thank you everyone for watching, and we will be back next week, same time, same place, to talk about the new Sunday service. So yeah, everyone have a great day and see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.